The first of what would go on to be a major franchise, Jurassic Park has some deleted scenes that, in hindsight, could have set up the dinosaurs and some character arcs much sooner than we got. Take for example Ellie Sattler and Robert Muldoon. Though it was never made, there was a scene written into the script that had the duo tracking raptors through the jungle after the big T-Rex attack. In the official behind the scenes book, The Making of Jurassic Park by Don Shea and Jodie Duncan, they mention a longer trek through the jungle had been planned. Instead of splitting up and only briefly encountering danger, they would have shared a tense, slow burn sequence where the raptors were shown actively stalking them as intelligent hunters. This would have built up the raptors' threat level much earlier in the story, adding even more dread before the final visitor center confrontation. It also would have given Muldoon more heroic moments before his shocking death. Had this sequence been filmed and included, it could have added a much greater weight to Dr. Alan Grant's theory that raptors hunt in packs. Although we eventually get a chance to see it, bringing this on earlier in the movie would have made it feel like the culmination of a long, drawn-out battle of wits between man and dinosaur rather than seeming sudden. Watching the creatures consistently outsmarting their human prey, audiences would have been even more terrified of the raptors throughout the movie. Considering where Dr. Henry Wu ends up in the franchise, it would have been nice to see more of that come out in the original movie. This had apparently been the plan initially. In the original Michael Crichton novel, there is a much bigger Henry Wu speech about genetic engineering shortcuts. Early script drafts by David Coep did include this explanation, but again, the scene was cut before they got it filmed. In this conversation, Wu discusses gene splicing, control methods, and the notion that none of the dinosaurs are truly authentic to the fossil record. This is covered in Jurassic World, but including it in the original would have made that movie connect better to the original franchise, and Wu's explanation would better indicate greed as justification for creating the Indominus Rex. It would become a continuation rather than a fresh mistake. Cutting this scene made the science more mysterious, but if it stayed, it would have foreshadowed major problems caused by tampering with nature. By showcasing Wu's ambition earlier, audiences would also have had a clearer moral thread running through the franchise. It would have made Wu's eventual transformation into a morally ambiguous antagonist feel more natural rather than sudden. Instead of seeming like a dedicated scientist gone astray, he would have been framed from the beginning as someone willing to bend ethics in the name of scientific progress. Moving on from the original, there were also opportunities in The Lost World that could have provided more dino power for the movie. An additional dinosaur stampede sequence was planned for The Lost World, which would have featured giant herbivores like Mamenchisaurus thundering across the landscape. Jurassic Park fan archives have found that early storyboards of the movie show a planned Mamenchisaurus stampede sequence during the Hunters Roundup. This would have shown the sheer overwhelming size and power of Isla Sorna's dinosaur population. However, due to pacing reasons, director Steven Spielberg chose to cut this section of the scene before it was ever filmed. Including this would have visually reinforced Malcolm's warning that nature cannot be contained or controlled. It also would have made it even clearer that InGen's ambitions were foolish and doomed to fail, showcasing the dinosaurs not as isolated attractions, but as a massive, uncontrollable force, creating a nice bit of foreshadowing for the next movie in the franchise. Some choices made for Jurassic Park 3 were well suited to the messaging the filmmakers wanted to convey for the movie and the franchise as a whole. Had they chosen to keep and not delete these original scenes, it could have changed the message entirely. Billy Brennan's story is a great example of this. His character nearly experienced a very different end. Originally, Billy died after his reckless attempt to steal Velociraptor eggs. The plan was that he would have died rescuing Eric from the Pteranodon nest. This would have been a minor heroic act for Billy compared to the redemption arc he actually receives in the movie when he appears alive at the end. Keeping the original death would have made the movie's message about respect for nature much harsher, but it would have also conveyed the message that it is never too late to see the light and change for the better rather than be driven by greed. Billy's death could have also paralleled the franchise's earlier tragic character arcs such as Dennis Nedry, emphasizing that recklessness around nature brings about dire consequences. It would have provided an even darker tone for Jurassic Park 3, which already flirted with more horror elements compared to the earlier films. The Spinosaurus, Jurassic Park the 3's apex predator, simply vanishes after the river attack in the finished movie, but deleted material showed it being killed by raptors thanks to Alan Grant utilizing a velociraptor resonation chamber to summon them, thus giving the humans a final sense of victory over the monstrous creature. Had we seen the humans victorious over the Spinosaurus, it would have indeed brought some closure to its storyline, but it would have significantly shifted the idea of hope for humans against such dangerous creatures, altering the movie's message entirely. It would have reinforced the idea that humans could still fight back against their creations, rather than being victims of their own avarice. Instead, leaving it alive gave the creature a ghost-like, almost mythological presence, adding to the sense that some threats will always remain. Moving into the new collection of Jurassic Park movies, there are some moments in Jurassic World that would have added more depth to the characters and themes of the movie. One key change came in the form of Vic Hoskins, played by Vincent D'Onofrio. Hoskins was originally set up to be a much more openly sinister character in Jurassic World. Early drafts of the script and some deleted scenes showed Hoskins speaking far more candidly about his ambition to militarize the dinosaurs, particularly the raptors. He had long-term plans to turn dinosaurs into biological weapons and reshape the future of warfare through controlled and targeted evolution in a similar way that they created the Indominus Rex. Director Colin Trevorrow has mentioned in interviews that these moments were cut from the final film to keep the pacing focused on survival and action. However, leaving them on the cutting room floor meant that the full extent of Hoskins' villainy was never really showcased. Had the scenes stayed in, Hoskins would have been a far more chilling, calculated antagonist who had been waiting for the right moment to seize control, rather than an opportunist reacting to the chaos. Moving into the new collection of Jurassic Park movies, there are some scenes in the movies that follow Jurassic World that could have reshaped the way we see the story so far. Again, in Fallen Kingdom, there are moments that not only would have pulled on our nostalgic heartstrings a bit more, but also provided a better setup for future movies. This can be seen in the original ending of Fallen Kingdom. Although nothing was filmed, director J.A. Bayona has mentioned in interviews that an extended ending existed, differing from what was actually shown. The final shots planned to include dinosaurs not just entering suburban and rural areas of America, but also running wild across more recognizable places, including big tourist and cityscape locations like Las Vegas. If the extended ending had been kept, it would have been a thrilling and terrifying glimpse into the franchise's future, making the final twist not just a tease, but a full setup for Jurassic World Dominion. Seeing dinosaurs and landmarks familiar to modern audiences would have escalated the stakes dramatically. It would have emphasized that the world had truly changed forever, not just theoretically, but visibly and irreversibly. And finally, the latest in the movie franchise. There is one element of Jurassic World Dominion that could have jolted audiences back to trying to understand who the true villains of the franchise are. The original plan for Jurassic World Dominion was a prologue that showcased the Cretaceous world in full beauty, with dinosaurs living naturally before the meteors, or humans, ever arrived. This would then cut to a T-Rex rampage at a drive-in theater, perfectly mirroring how humanity's recreation of the past had gone terribly wrong. This particular prologue did indeed get filmed, and was actually a limited release specifically for IMAX. If this prologue had opened the movie across all screens, not just for the IMAX audiences, it would have set a more emotional tone and set the stance that the dinosaurs were never villains, but victims of humanity trying to play God. Looking back at all these deleted scenes, it's clear how different the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World stories could have been. A deeper look at Dr. Wu's experiments could have exposed the reasons for his selfish actions and InGen's reckless ambition much earlier. If the Spinosaurus had been hunted down, Jurassic Park 3 would have felt more complete, but with a message about humans remaining victorious over nature. Even Dominion could have opened globally, not just for IMAX. These lost moments didn't just offer extra action or emotional beats, they had the power to shift character arcs, deepen franchise themes, and even change how audiences view dinosaurs themselves. It could have served as a stark reminder that the extinct lizards are not monsters, but the victims of human ambition. Thanks for watching ScreenRant. Stick with us for more movie deep dives.